So, my 2023 has been dog shit so far. I'm just going to put that one out there straight away. So, yeah. For those of you who aren't aware, I'm just going to kind of get this one out of the way now. I did this more eloquently about 10 minutes ago, but for some reason the SD card I was recording on decided to corrupt halfway through recording and deleted everything. So I'm having to do this twice, which is exactly what I want to do. Start of February, I got a phone call. I was on shift at the time. It was Saturday night, and I had 3 missed calls from the hospital that my dad was in. There's only one reason you ever get that many missed calls from a hospital. And then spent an hour and a half trying to get back through to the ward, because for some reason I couldn't just phone them directly back. And it took until about 2 in the morning before I managed to finally get back in touch with them to find out that, indeed, my dad had passed away. And what proceeded from that has been 2 really, really, really awful months. It is a strange thing to be 31 and have no parents left. This is heavy stuff. If you're clicking onto this being like, oh, this is going to be a nice light whiskey, you're probably like 30 seconds, you're like, Jesus Christ. Reason I'm covering this is obviously I've been absent for a minute, and I have never really had a proper opportunity to acknowledge that because I've been dealing with loss, grief, myself as well, and also working at the same time. Because here's a fun thing when, like, somebody dies, you get a bit of time off, but you don't get the full processing time that you probably should do, because the machinery has to keep kind of turning. That's not to, like, slag my work or anything. Like, I've been generous with the time I've been able to get out, because it's been tricky as well, given that my dad lives in a completely different country, let alone city. So it's been fun. Logistically, it's been fun. But as a consequence of that, I have not been wanting to do anything, basically, and this is a part of that as well. So I'm now in a position, a couple months later, where I'm finally starting to get around to kind of starting back up again on things that I did in the past, like seeing friends, doing this. Dating is something I'm having a crack at again. So, yeah, I can't guarantee that this is going to be a consistent every week kind of a thing. I'm dipping a toe in to see how I find doing this again. Hopefully there's no more technical malfunctions, but who knows. One of the things that this year has taught me as well, and really the last 6 months, is that change is an inevitable part of life, and it's something that can attack you from all corners, but is also something that can be positive and should be embraced from time to time. So with that in mind, hello there everyone, and welcome to John's Drams, the channel where I, John, have a dram. You'll get used to it, don't worry about it. And today we're going to be talking about this. This is Talisker Port Ruighe. This is probably one of my favourite of the Talisker family. I'm actually quite a fan of Talisker. We've not really covered too much of Talisker. We've covered a couple of their special releases, and they've both been lovely. But this, for my money, I would say still stands out as my favourite. So, yeah, I mean, if after that kind of, like, heavy, hard-hitting thing, and just like, I kind of just want to know the conclusion and go, I suppose that's it. It's lovely. Bye. But for those of you wanting to kind of stick around and be like, okay, I should probably keep an eye on this guy. Is he going to be okay? Be fine. Don't worry about it. This is Talisker that's finished in port casks, hence the name. Also, the pronunciation Ruighe, it's spelt R-U-I-G-H-E. Ruighe. Because Gaelic likes to fuck with people. It's just having a bit of fun. You know, it's just trying to screw with people. Due to the aforementioned malfunction, I already have this poured in the glass, which I suppose has given it some airing time, so that's lovely. This is a no-age statement. It's the classic Talisker 45.7, I want to say off the top of my head. 45.8. I was off the time. How could I be so fucking stupid? 45.8. Colouring chill filtered. Bit of an odd. 45.8 is very odd. I don't know if they're just going for kind of like a deliberately, obtusely specific thing with that to make it look like they know what they're doing. I don't know. There might well be purpose towards that. I may just be being excessively cynical. But at the same time, it's a very strange number to have your entire range be. But hey, I'm not a whiskey maker. I am a Dumbo with a glass. So, on the nose, there's beautiful sort of tannic red fruit qualities to it. Red currant, cranberry, there's a little bit of apricot, a little bit of a kind of like a peachy sweetness to it as well. I know apricots and peaches are not the same thing, there is a crossover. Stone fruits, let's go with that. Let's go stone fruits, why not? I've missed doing this, I have. There's ever so slightly sort of a kind of a sweet, smoky kind of an almost like a barbecue sauce. Sweet and smoky. And there is a little bit of bubblegum as well. I'm getting something a little sweet and artificial in there as well. It's not offensive, it's quite a nice sort of complimenting note actually. But yeah, a fair bit going on the nose, and you can detect a lick of smoke. Now then, when I've described this whiskey to people in the past, because I'm no stranger to this one, certainly, I have described it previously as a schizophrenic malt, which, in hindsight, probably not the best thing to call anything, and I have kind of cleaned that up a little bit to be the everlasting gobstopper of whiskies, because whenever I've had it, it's sort of continuously changing flavours. And some people have gotten what I mean, and other people haven't. But this was something that I was exposed to quite early on in my whiskey journey. It's probably only like the third or fourth whiskey that I gave a go. So it's a very unusual one to come across that early on, when you experiment with things like Balvenie and Glenlivets and stuff like that, or Glenlivets, as I was calling them at the time, because I was a poncy prick who didn't know what he was talking about. Still am, I suppose, but you know, I'm able to hide it a little better. Gooseberry. A little bit of gooseberry. There was something I was like, oh, there's a new note here. Yeah, 100% gooseberries. Lovely. It's really fruity and nice. I know nice is a crap descriptor, but fuck it. We all say nice sometimes when we just don't quite know how to put into words the fact that we are enjoying what it is that we're experiencing. I can't all be poets all the time, I suppose. Right, I'm going to take a sip of this, because I feel like we should get round to that before more people are like, is there anything else coming that we need to know about? Fucking hope not, to be honest. Ooh. Yeah, so initial sip, first bite, I suppose, I was getting something sort of like an orange marmalade. Then smoke comes through, almost immediately behind it. A little bit of salinity. And then it starts giving way to these like wonderful sort of bright raspberry notes, which is weird, given everything that you've just had. And then there's like a barley sugar finish, so it's kind of, there's kind of an up and down and all over the place with that on the first sip. That's quite, I mean, it's what I remember. It's kind of like the like every flavour jelly beans from that Wizard series that must not be named anymore. I know, separate the artist from the art, but second sip, greeted with something a little more minty, a little more kind of menthol and eucalyptus, a little fresher. Smoke's still coming through, but it's a little more subdued on the second go. It's a little honeyed. Marmalade's not really coming through anymore, bizarrely. There's again those kind of like fresh berry notes. There's a little biscuity on the finish this time around. So it's changing, it's evolving. It tends to happen as the more you drink of a whiskey, like with anything. This wasn't something that I was aware of, again, when I first picked this particular one out at a bar and I was going through a glass of it and I was like, oh, it keeps changing. That is something that kind of happens with a lot of whiskies. But my experience of having that happen so definitely the first time is one that stands with me with this whiskey, and it's part of the reason why I still kind of... I go back to it, you know. I mean, I've got a bottle of it now, which is very nice. Again, still can't really believe it's taken me this long to get around to this, because this was one of my gateway whiskies as well. So, whilst I'm in a bit of a nostalgic mood, I thought may as well look at that. The third sip opens up with something a lot richer. Almost kind of like a raisin, or almost kind of like a PX. There's no sherry in this, so it's very odd to get that kind of note. Smoke is even subtler. It's giving way more to salinity now. And this time the berries are close to kind of like a red berry or a cranberry. Red currant, I should say, or a cranberry. A little more tart. And quite a soft, malty back note on the finish. It's got good body to it. It's nice and viscous. I'm going to stick a little bit of water in, see what occurs. I can't place my hand on my jug, so I'm just using a little shot glass at the minute. There we go, not too much. On the nose, a lot more of that smoke is coming through now. It's more of a predominant nasal experience. I think the smoke is all-encompassing, but it's definitely much more forward. It's a lot louder now that it's been opened up a little bit. On the palate, much sweeter and a little more monotone now. The smoke is more of a consistent companion all the way through. And then there's this wonderful kind of buttery brioche flavour, as if you've just sort of scraped it with strawberry jam. There's like a very faint element of fruitiness to it. It's quite rich and buttery with an element of smoke. It's lovely, but it's almost lacking that roller coaster of sensation that you had at full strength. And the finish is a lot more sort of... There's more heat to it. There's more kind of like almost a chilly kick to it. There's like a spice element on the finish. Yeah, rich and lovely, like a buttered crumpet in whiskey form. Oh, I've got crumpets. I could go for a crumpet right about now, actually. I'm so English sometimes. That's an absolute delight. Now then, I don't know if you can even see that, how I've framed this. I don't know if you can see me balancing the glass on top of the bottle like that. I'm going to put that down, actually. I don't trust myself. I'll be updating my score sheet on my findings with this one. I don't have anything else really to say. Oh, actually, there is one more thing I do need to say. Patreon, because I covered this the last recording, no longer exists. I mean, it does. I didn't close everything. I didn't do a Jeff Bezos. I just... Jeff Bezos? That's not who I mean. Anyway, yeah, I've pulled my Patreon page for the simple fact that I was struggling to keep it up to date, and I think a lot of people that were supporting me on that platform had noticed that I was struggling to keep it up to date. So I'm reeling back a little bit, and I'm making it a little easier for myself to keep on top of, and I'm just keeping it to YouTube. YouTube has its own sort of finance infrastructure, if you will. Now, I didn't have access to it back when I set up the Patreon. I set up the Patreon back during the pandemic, when I had a lot more time on my hands, and since then I have definitely struggled to keep up to date with it, and I've made the decision that ultimately anyone who does decide to support me, it's just not fair. Because they weren't getting the value they probably should have been, to be honest. I appreciate everyone who has supported me through this. It's been fantastic. I am keeping the financial incentives active on YouTube because it's a one-stop shop platform. If I'm uploading videos to YouTube, then I can also dial into things on there, and it's simpler for me to manage. And I think that's what I need to do right now, is streamline a lot of processes. There's also a tip function now. It's called Thanks, although it's tipping. It's 100% a tip function. I've seen a lot of folks on Twitter that like to get their willy out, being like, hey, you can send me this on PayPal, like send me a tip on PayPal. It's the same kind of thing, but I'm not going to be getting my knob out. YouTube doesn't allow that, despite the fact that there is a platform called YouTube Red. Turns out it's not what you think it is. Wow, that's a joke from like 5 years ago. Yeah, I think I'm done. Possibly permanently after this. Yeah, so welcome back on board, I suppose. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to take this a little slowly, but let's see how this goes. But for now, though, thank you very much for watching, and do join me next time, where I'll be drinking something else. Does the outro still work? Kind of. I'll think of something.